going on. 61 years ago, in 1960, on this day, the first Tibetan people's representatives took their oath of office. This is the initial step towards a systematic future in exile, guided by the principles of democracy envisioned by His Holiness, the great 14th Dalai Lama of Tibet. Today, the 2nd of September 2020, marks the 60th anniversary of Tibetan Democracy Day.
Zerim Thangbo, Ngado Chuzu Jubeto, Pemi Dixuki, Zezo number Sikyon Sogan to Pepsam, Zego Unzu Shugi Tomar, Sama Kushen Pe Gagap Chimbi Gelu Bigu, Pe Gagap Chimbi, Gathering Empire Tone, Chimbi Shugu.
I request the audience to stand for the Tibetan national anthem.
Zabe Lotar Manzu Tijin Yin Laya, Shungde Sungshe Dan Kandu Lushe Tapten So, Gaber Sungzi Shusi Yoyaka, Nielam Gakar Kisinzin Surba, Kusha Prana Mukherjee Cho, Kuze Pempa Zobe, Yigi Nuzu Chungwar, Pemi Dixune, Nyanyi Kududan, Dongsem Nyamge Tsule, Kasan Sishuanambe, Chumbi Mulam Sungden Data, Ninche Ring Lezam Sha Yu, Tanashin Taringi Zegor, Kandu Lushe Gi Lerim Meba Nanson, Zerim Nibatela, Sama. Gagar ki sinzi surba tambo kongi che do nyanyi kyudi che ngaje kama chigrin shuju.
Normally, Tibetan Democracy Day is celebrated with cultural performances of the 3 provinces of Tibet by the Tibetan Institute of Performing Arts. But this year, we have decided to cancel all these programs in order to pay respect to the former Indian President Pranab Mukherjee's sad demise. Central Tibetan administration held prayers yesterday for the late former President of India, and offices were closed for the rest of the day. Let us all observe a moment of silence.
Tujina Zerim Sumba Pyogi dogar tsoba ne mangzo sashi bilam shugyu. Tujina. Dine pande sikyon chone dilu sikyon lobyen shegen lobtu namla chage bigyu.
I request CTA President Dr. Lobsang Singye to kindly present the Sikyong certificate to the 19 awardees.
Tari loma khachi jego thola ya nyi su char thu bata ani loma khachi char thu be me ani ngyo la ya diga jego thola ya char gen su mingshung dojan shugi yin rimbe chini ya perona masuri phegim ne yimbe toma chonzom la kyaja kubchu kotu cha shi lwendu dine sela kyu phegim ne yimbe tenji namje la kyaja kubchu konga cha nyi lwendu tenji namje la tene masuri phegim ne yimbe phente chiring la gyaja kubchu konga lwendu Tene suja phegim ne yimbe tenzi ingse la gyaja gupchu konga lundu. Tujena ani jegyo thola ya pheptu mebe loman namgi mingshun the ya doja shugi yin thoma dela ya kunga lekchung masurim phegim lopta gyaja gupchu kogu cha ni lundu. Tene sonam topke la masuri phegim lopta gyaja gupchu kopke cha thu. Tene tenzi nyima la masuri phegim lopta gyaja gupchu kopke cha ni. Tene tenzi chiring la habapur ten lop gyaja gupchu kotu cha ge. Tene tenzi nodren la masuri phegim lopta gyaja gupchu kotu cha ge. Tene tenzi yoden la masuri phegim lopta gyaja gupchu kotu cha shi. Tene lamu yuzo la masuri phegim lopta gyaja gupchu kotu cha shi. Tene tenzi noryang la masuri phegim lopta gyaja gupchu kotu cha shi. Nima lamu la mon kot sambota ten lop gyaja gupchu kotu cha shi. Phunzo yangzom la masuri phegim lopta gyaja gupchu kotu cha ni. Kunga tashi la masuri phegim lopta gyaja gupchu konga cha ge. Tenzi namge la masuri phegim lopta gyaja gupchu konga cha thu. Tejen sangmo la masuri phegim lopta gyaja gupchu konga cha ni. Tenzi pema la masuri phegim lopta gyaja gupchu konga. Tenzi yishe la mon gor sambota ten lop gyaja gupchu konga. Tenzi ingse la suja phegim lopta gyaja gupchu konga. Tuchena Tene pande sigyon cho ne chilo nidong nishu le zirim chungi ki dezen sum ki zebi angrim thangbo nipa sumba suyamba che ki loptu namla gande potang loptu chage pigyu.
I request Honorable President Dr. Lobsang Singye to kindly award the Gande Potang certificate to the class 12 toppers from the 3 streams of arts, science and commerce.
Doma chinzum la tarin jego tola nye supebye ani morangi cheri dezen khone ya angrim niba suyamba tha ani gyaja de gupchu kotu cha shi ani masuri phegim ne redu. Tujena ani loman she namta jego cha thu me begengi ani mingshung di ya tojan shugi in rigchen sumgi angrim thangbe loman namgi chenshung cheri deje khone masuri phegim lopta ni yimbe kunga lekchung la gyaja gupchu koku cha ni gyuje deje khone masuri phegim lopta sonam topke la gyaja gupchu kopke cha thu cheri deje khone masuri phegim lopta tenzi nodren la gyaja gupchu kotu cha ge. Tene rikchen sumgi angrim nyebe loma namgi chenshung di yin gyuje dejen khone masuri phegim lopta tenzi nyima la gyaja gupchu kopke cha ni. Chongri dejen khone masuri phegim lopta tenzi wangmo la gyaja gupchu kopshi cha ge. Tene rikchen sumgi angri sumbe loma namgi chenshung cheri dejen khone masuri phegim lopta kunga tashi la gyaja gupchu konga cha ge. Gyuje dejen khone hapapu ten lop tenzi chiring la gyaja gupchu kotu cha ge. Chongri dejen khone masuri phegim lopta tenzi ngawan la gyaja gupchu kongi cha ge. Tujena tene ya pande sigyon chone phegi dogar chobe yarki nidong nishu le nyentin tepter unje nangyu.
I once again request Honorable President to inaugurate TIPA's Yerki 2020 album.
Pande Sikyon cho tuje na Zerim Dumba Dilu Sikyon Riji Kanzin Chedu Sheken Nambe Tsenshung Nyendun Shuguyin.
Next, we are going to declare the names of the awardees for the Sikyong Award for Academic Accomplishment, Dr. Kyelzang Wangdu, for his thesis titled History Education for Nation Building in Exile, The Case of the Tibetan Refugee Schools, and Jingmi Wangchuk for his thesis titled Insights into the Mechanism of Genome Packaging in Bacteriophage and N4.
Bumramba Tambudela ya Bumramba Kesa Wandulare, Ani Korangi, Chezom ki Jushi di, Ani Zenju du Gekap Zutunche, Logi Lopso, Zenju Pemi, Lopte Nebab Lengwa Shebi Jushi Tola ya Zomdi Nandu, and Dene Bumramba Jingme Wanchulare, Bumramba Jingme Wanchulagi, Chezom ki Jushi di, Ani Tasin Tsote Pedim, N4 yi Rigu Nyarsa Mala Tangzin Le Tube Nyamship Kola Chezom Tinandu. Ani Zerim Geba de la Pande Pemima Chidu Tsoto Choki, Rankong Leje Shablo Nishenga Yun Kowa Namla, Lexu Chage Tan, Nashu Nube Leshi Sengto Sheke, Nashu Nila Lexu Chage Bigu.
I request Honorable Speaker of Tibetan Parliament in Exile Pema Jungne to present an award to the staff who have completed 25 years of service at CTA, Sring Yangi, and Youth Empowerment Award 2020 to Sunam Topgel and Tenzing Rabge.
Tambudela Yu Rangkong Leje, Shablo Nisanga Kobe, Tsenla, Sring Yangi La Redu, Ani Mura Chiri Leguni Re, Nedim Te Sujo Degen, Tsenyam Redu, Kome Logining du Shubayina, Chilo Chikdong Gupja Gupchukopshi Lor Gentung Nedim To, Shiri Kalun Choda, Tungje Chogi, Tungi Tan, Zingyong Chegi, Tsute Leje to Kosha Nando, Ani Chilo Chikdong Gupja Gupchukonga Lorlaya, Lenge Ranja Tola, Leje Ngomar Kosha Nandu, Chilo Nidon Chik Lorlaya, Letung to Nepar Namata, Shinyon Sempe Legen Kong, Lopta Ka, Tang Geju Genge, Tangzo, Tang Yagar Geyon, Zirim, Chuba, Chungi, Yigu Cheme, Dubde Chodom, Soti, Dan Seta, Kapon Telopka, Puri Gegen, Rector Demcho, Gegen Namlaya, Suebo Kungem Shugu, Cheki Lenge di Shudu, Ani Nidon Gulolaya, Legun Todam per Nepar Nandu, Nidon Chudu Lolaya, Degen to Nepar ki Lenge, Ranja Tolaya, Tangrab Shinyon Sempe, Leshi Konlaya, Sabjon Kadan, Sheri Tsojin, Pame Tsojin, Chiba Loze Leshi, Ani Yunjon Soki Koti Lenge Shugu Temi Leshi Kagi Lengin Shu the Shumi Imbare, and Tabar Shablo Nisanga Sindu, Tiri Yangila. Tene Nashu Nube Leshi Sengdo Shegen, Ani Nashu Nila Ya Lexo Chage Nandu, Pemidixo Nancy Lekune, Rangre Chizo Nalaya, Nashu Parding Leme Solaya, Lady Jonda Gu, Ranka Ranzo Yongutan, Lady Jonda Lopton Sinja, Chigir Nila Pembe, Migbe Yobe, Lechar Pekin, Nashu Laya, Cheton, the Yunzin Shuje to Yapande Kashane, Yakatu Shubeto, Nashu Nube Sengdo Soju Ne, Lota Demtu Gipemi. Chizo Nalaya, Migbe Yobe, Nashu Nilaya, Dasar Manzu Tujin Shunde Zego, Kap Cheton Senda Bigu, Leshi Sarbashi Gimbe, Chilo Nido Nishule, Pemidixu, Nancy Legongi, Nashu Nube, Leshi Sengte Shegen, Mongo deguling ne yimbe ne de pemi sonam topge la da dasa ne de pemi tenji rabge la namni yimbata khon namni la sengde chage ta leke hingor sumti nga don rebyu tenji rabge la quran thanda de shu esare tenji rabge la quran gi logi ning di shu bayina chilo chikdong gubkya geju gebshi lor phene gyakar du george suja phegim tu lobjon goju shu bata chilo chikdong gubkya gubchu gobdin lor zirim geba thwenje ni don chik par lo shiring suja phegim lobte lakshe sogan lo tholop kan ki sugyun ki lati jonda thajimbana du ni don ni lo la ya chilo ni don ni ne ya ni don chungni pala ya lo churing norling kyu du tenshi chebe thangde gaje lobnye kan du ya lapti che chejong ta chale nyam tu nang du tene lo shiring ya kuja namge thasang khyap gong su gyebe melu changti thangge lobnye kan du ya thanga thiseng na chale nang du tene ni don chonga lo ni sung ya dasa jogi wara kyu du terap nang be sugyun lapti gyuje kan she gergi lapti lomnye kan shi sarju nang te ani lomnye kan di gyu pheri ta himalaya ri gyu ta na shi chige wal lapti lopti nang ne thabar loptu nigya chamla ya lopten chung yo la ani letu muti ne pemi re du ani tanda sengdo chaga shen chik di shen nange di ani quran gi te sonam topge la re sonam topge la tanda togim nyerim kembe ani quran tanda mon ko sane ran ya mazu de jing mola sengdo shen na re du tujina 제림 구바 반대 표미 마치디 초초초기 표미 마치디 현조기 숭신난규
I request Honorable Speaker Pema Chungne to deliver the statement of the Tibetan Parliament in exile.
Roal hada jebe mandibe zashi saden geden yonzo gingada jiden shide debe jinong konsu kyanggun tamji kenji siba chimbucho chogi ngozar medu chungbe tile la dene zenju be mi chepsi giranshin yandabe mangzu lamsu du yune derin be gelu nidon chige shibshebdu dao dunbe tse chunga chilu nidon nishu dao gube tse ni longo tuchu shibu kobe duzi kebar jen dito konsa kyanggun chimbucho la gadin je ringi guisha ngundu tangde bimi tizu gi zezu namba dongchi shung ube sishuwa namba shije bimi yongdan bedan bimir pendro nangengi shongdan trezo beden gyabgyo soboka shidila gamu jegen geji mangzo yongla bimi mangzo unyebe nimor bimi ma chidu lenzo ki zaze samdida tashitile shugui mangzo ringlu ne mi rige lugyu shungram na zenyum na ulchu pomo rigyu so mi chizo so chongmingi yawajebe dushite mebar jene jinyon sam tumon la tabe dranyamgi chizo shido gyura mimangi döme zor zembe ringlu shi yinla labjengi ringlu dendashig ngungyur yongche zamling gegab kagi lugyu yurim tu mautu da welang tabzu shegi jungde kone gelpam tauju jede mimangi wongyur nushu ngungyur jedab nangda nangmi su yume bimi jizo nangi mangzuni mangzo ne tabzu tulonso ngulragi rondron tamuzanya tang magoyo bar be gegabgi chusi nyege uti jino gongsa kyanggun chimbucho ne mangzo la suze nawashi yin gongsa chogi kuna tamyo du ne begi jizo lamsue la duda tsambe gyuchu goge side be gegab chenbyo lungi tonggen sheje chilo chidong ku ngabju ngani lor leju legung suzu da chilo chidong ku ngabju ngapshi le lunju do lasar gyoshib legung chenzu zeba so chepsi ki lamlu ningbar chudi chuyushin zebe mejung tuge samyo labchen zesan rimbar kyambe tuji sijin kone benbang namla digi nzongdengi chizoshi dungyu tuzun cherge nanshinbe kap gyana marsho 기 원슈단 장년 제시를 손대 배춘den기 신감 등이 용수 전송 제대 실루치동 영업 중 하고 로 야가르나 전주도 배고요 전주도 저르제 손이기 가색 내징외 겹주베 내다 대도비 원내장 진호공사 경군 정부 초기 투시 운유 따라 비미 첩시기 롱루 망수전도 유르유르 태유로 차시 장난제 절치동 구역 두주 나와니베 세 숨니 내조 도지된도 진호공사 경군 정부 초라 전주 비미 추숨 추규의 제배 고접 상점기 댄슈 더름뷰단 델 랑도르 슈제 난겐 통무체 위lâm 슈베갑 원서초기 배디 나라터 마인바 배 추시 인den기 망주의 숑시 조교 하장 계층부 인고를 깔로 남된 패바따르 지루치동 구역 두주 나와 구배 세니니 배미마 지뒤 란조 갑 당배 진호공사 경군 정부 초기 시행을 제사 담비 슈반네 비미 망주 람루 데 토마르 운예바시 지루치동 구기 두주레지 르 나와 주베 체 주인이 마음 벽이 저림 닝드 덴베다 대리 미망게 상자남 시den도 제데 저림기 된센카 년뒤 보죠 나외 나한테 슈가도 미망 세계 지뒤 넘버 양 거두르단다 저림 덴베 제데 레 벼랑젠 라수 주마타 통면 전진 저림 차례 더유다 실루치동 국기 두주 레숨 나와 숨배 세 주인이 숨주뒤된 탱시벤 제고토 공식 경군 정부초내 마음비기 저림 신디 용다 캡다 꺄한데 전주도 내그 전조 미만내 시제 비미 용기 원섭 준비 지뒤 웬덤 슈규 쇠 비미 지주기 뭐 망제 람쇠토 원수 유난제바다 실루치동 국기 둔주 동아 르 나고베체 니니네 송 망제 뒤제 숑대기 송지 숑구초바 네 다버 송지 숑미이 실루치동 국기 계주 고드네 송 공사 경군 정부 전부 지뒤 란조다 가샤 토구 제산도 동규 남동안지 페바 마세 진용기 고디 실능 고샤 거미 망소라 섬주 디규르 소 림버 제데 지루치동 국기 구줄려 나왕아베 나 전주 비미 미뒤 숨겨 두주 레구섬 뒤베 믹스의 소진토 발게 걸려 웬딤다 지뒤 당세 빠전 농유소에 두주 샤보다 공서초기 저림 신디 결십 소중 태교 장대 지루치동 국기 구주고지 나와 주베체 주시니 갑주지베 배미마 지뒤 란조수 전주 비미 저림 덴베 나시 신도 주베체 뉴섭게니 공사 경군 전부 초기 초전제 나와 제라 덴네 전주 비미 디준 디신 시제 팀이 예베 댕럽진기 망준 둘루다 튠바시도 유난제 질은예동 찍로 공사 경군 전부 초기 송티 나 제팀 껴주 괴베 가공 따라 섭시기 genwa ne che de yudu pepsin chepsigi goti kalun chiba mimangi 태가를 웬뎀 제구주대 망주 페림나 륜규 칭부시 중요 전주 비미제림나 공식경군 군대 나림 슝기 gen진다 계급이 운지 인배 차견 준 여야 망주 페림 용선 조배 체 지로 니동 주지 로르 비미 트부기 대자 코너를 공시 라미기 밀로 시계 머신점기 컨템포랑 버침비 첩시던 진용기 공화 용소 조바 미망기 태가를 웬뎀 체베 고티 남라 지드 제데 전주 비미 대주니 팀루 원진된 덴베 댕럽이 망주 럼루 양다 사된 진식도 유난제유 비미 망주 페림트 다벤 전주 비미 제림다 위디 디시 제 팀디 카 니슈섭드윤섬 겨주 덴베 리루 중유 대송 베미마 지드 란소기 천장다 지드기 장보 리윤제라 림베 유도 망부친유 지드 란소기 이 난기 통면 천장 Commission of Tibetan People's Deputies Sheba, Chidu Cup Dumbe, Dusu, Assembly of Tibetan People's Deputies Shebar, Chilo Chidong Geju, Tawat Dangbe, Jobgene, Yujuna, Deje Chidu Cup, Chushube, Dusu, Tibetan Parliament in Exile, She, Yangju Nawa Shin, Tadan, Dedar, Neyu, Chidu Chozu Jebe, In Togi, Senja, Chairman and Vice Chairman, Speaker and Deputy Speaker, Shebar Gerjuna, Chidu Tangze, Toma, Chusumda, Rimgi, Gobdu, Sozo, Gogo Shiber, Nunti, Nande, Tade, Char, Chus, Chogosumne, Chidu, Juret, Dan, Chugu, Chimbu Shida, Yungrum Benjene, Chidu, Nire, Europe, Dan, Flo Africa Kuni, Flojan Ari Kuni, Gaben Rusum Pube, Asia, Australia, Ne, Chik, Nom Chidu Transhu Shanga, Chigi, Leun Te Chidu Lanzo, Cup Dumbe Bar Losumri Imbata, Cup Gaban Ne, Leun Longare, Paranangi, Tadechar, Leun Longare, Ranja Negu, Dona Debe Long, Chuta Turi, Cup du Sosor, Kuyokuru Shibe, Pumi Manzu Lamlula, Leju Rimnangi, Mimangi Uti, Sigonda, Chidu, Mima Rangi, Tagar, Vidu Lamne, Demgonawata, Sosu Uti, Deru Gazeta, Maumper, Lecher Bandi, Shuyu, Cheki, Che, Logor Chigna, Ledomgi, Trezoda, Winzi, Trezo, Trezo, Tengi, Sushin Yu, Shenyang, Pumi, Tizuki, Manzu Kawasumgi, Yage, Sane Timshi Kanda, Sane Tumi Sondu, Sane Gonzin, Legon, Kuzab Dunju Khan, Randen Sojun Shegi, Tizuya, Saden Zutuyu, Tadechar Gaben Ru Sum Ne, Sane Tumi, Sane Tuzo, Sumju Sobjeta, Shige to Chik, Sadu Sumju Sogu, Sane Gonzin, Legon Ngaju, Kuzab Dunju Khan, Josum, Randen Sojun, Dunju Dunga Cheyu, Tizu Deda, Yu, Zenju, Bumi, Mansogi, Shirim Manzu, Keben Lonsu Jumi Dan, Shungi Siju Ume Lam Dingi Yang, Bumi Chidu Lenzone, Dembe Nawashi Yin. Manzu Zenju be Nedan Tentashi Wane, Sosu Chambangi Godu Sebe, Talam Dan, Shungi Lansho Che, Manzu Lamne Taju, Nanam Der, Rawan Yube, Zamlin Jego Mangbu, Yimun Dan Ngaju, Cheda Jishin Yu. Nieja Chinda Gebe, Tse Nisabje Ne, Zogu Par, Beijing Du, Dunyangi, Benshongi, Leduen Gorgi, Shumun Sondu Ten Dumba, Seva Tsode, Xi Jinping So, Yanagi, Gudi, Tode Namda, Buran Yonjong Seva So, Yanagi, Besa Dumburu Gebe, Bu Kugi, Gudi, Tode Nam, Nyamshu Jelu, Kap Der Xi Jinping, Longden Guzu Shuyu, Tangi Zanzu的希望组用了匈奴加把节的，结个的天下的，有人得去了严嵩的，你们的作为出在军队昂讨论罗举人严嵩，勇敢苦有来说罗举人严嵩，唐山登不大，唐山登家拥有严嵩节套，团队优秀。Shebel, Shidun, Zedu Jegi Chube, Chizo Rinlu, Dengrip Jingi, Benjon Savashi, Beba, Chimbu, Zudun Chegwe, Lungden Sobayin, Gorda, Yan Lungden Gozuye, Nievado, Rangegi, Chulu, Tungu Jingi, Kajoda, Timdar, Chulu Jadun Lot, Dodam Jegu, Gyung, Jeba, Lungden Sobayin, Shedan, Yan Lungden Gozuye. Benjongi Ledungi, Nevado, Mege Kumbuchigula, Sungopdan, Miri Tundila, Shunun Gagyu, Deshin, De Shagu, De Shinzin, Shizin Sadan, Shu Dunsar Zigwe, Manzola, Lopsodan, Tidun Shagur, Shunun Gavadan, Manzo Kadela, Mogwe Chebe, Tabsunan, Shugur, Gulon, Gagab, Jene, Daniela, Sungyon Chebe, Saden. Karyan Chaba Jagwe, Tangi Luyu Dan, Tungu Sarbe Luyu, Kerju Goye Luyu, Chizo Rinlu Gombe Luyu Jegi, Losu Tingsa Bewa, 변종 산에 다 매개기 대외 루규 로스 띵서 빼네 미리카게 만소 라 양답에 계급 따와다 루규 따와 미리 따와 르네 따와 출루 따와 제 주규를 티든 자고 론덴 소바이 셰 소기 땀시 제 두배 손도 될라 때네 개숑기 베토 진베 담라다 도수진기 시주라 유와간야 동지 매바 마세 베기 루규라 쿄셰다 링네라 규르주 난덴 슈루라 셀레제 규제기 고 지라 야체로 동철기 남봉은 심벌때 손도 대리네 계지 지소트 넘버 던제 잠다 베개유도 규르유 라샤시도 규르유바 응세이 만주 람루 엄소 초바데 응어소 라렌도 따르급 랑게 셴범기 삼루테 니아버 돌고바이 하보도 줄로 니도니 스타지르 나 시신이게 위류급 전주 비미제팀 나세베 베기 유민남기 만주 개원 롱주 센대 용답소 초거 추규 능규 튠디라 도보 도시다 공서초기 투공 투시 대신 시슈 비민남기 닝도 냐메존 도시제기 자와 점 미롱외 처음에 랑도 견제 매바 그게 하버도 겨왕 군된 주시버 정부 초기 우티 상배워 배기 추유 정부 시다 용종 변다 조som 용조 기내 기념다 도나 동념기 도자직도 집에 공변 뉴버데 도시 동규 믹데 친일 랭겐 유겐 용세 여바 대달라 카데 조규다 디리기 랜도 사메 비미게 가시 고골루디 오 까브레 층인체베 도순 칠기기 이습제 상말 wengen유 여바 따르 삼시 년나 용외 비구슈이 야나기 동결 우엔네 체베 또입 니름 주급에 뜬긴 중대 다자 다란게 하 손신앙 응고 맹거 매바다 괴네 현다 민라버 서바 툭갑에 내염대 점린난게 계급 패무체를 다둥 강의 태 심벌 배미마 지들 현소 응외네 동생염게 수규이 야가르나라 차샤나 토마리 니름 괴급 중원 내소 니만네 니마 제만도 로미 마세 고get 담바 회양 탱 시원나웨 젠델기 내염 괴급 전교기 강지 내다 년섭 쳐버 때 상매 내염 원고 수준 용월 니유 계급 소수 남된 괴급 실송 통난 체계 난게 내염 대견배 달랜 배미만 지도 랜소 내 급주루베 저소 소디 주바 판경 수고 중화다 대시 개친난기 지도 숑대 초교카 참조 자구 중화 마세 배민내도 제유 야가릉아디카기나 저소 배된 격교 초바 선수다 유기 저소 배된 격교 초바 라수슈규 레된 여경 고겐 태유 난저 첩시 망조리 교르교르 소실의 진동 공식경군 정부 초기 고시시부 배미리다 계급기 체도 굴레 세매 교연나외 투지거딘 야질의 때내 중화 인바 매매토 멜로 조주링기 전주배 내법다 첩시 최的 리숑 계이 송교 자된 탑수 제기 토라 뒤균도네 람된 튠교다 편도 난게 니위자가 슈마 니기 쯔 시계급 카게 숑다 미망 창마를 도지거딘 라메도 체시 슈규다 다들 진호 공식경군 정부초 기 구지 샤베 개결 대행신 토기 시공 다다 흉긴도바다 배된 된다 뉴도세베 민든 슈규인 배미마치도 현소기 질은여도 니쇼다고 구배세니라
투지나 Zerim chupa pemi dikzu ki chiti lekun da Belgium kuzap tunjo lekun ni sungde ki dikjor nawe chino konsekyamgyon chenpucho ki Europe chidun sope nyamrup ki dushe la yumen ki kalup gojo shisha to nyentong sikwi shugyu.
Next, we are going to screen the documentary film by the Office of Tibet, Brussels, in honor of His Holiness the Dalai Lama and his admiration for the spirit of European Union.
President Adenauer and French leader de Gaulle during wartime, enemy, arch enemy. And then after war, I think in the spirit of reconciliation, then gradually they developed. You see, the concept of European Union. I think in early part of 20th century, they're impossible to create like European Union. First World War, Second World War, and even before, a lot of sort of violence. So people, through suffering, become more mature. So then they develop European Union. I think these are, really positive signs. Demilitarize the world. I think, of course, my lifetime will not achieve, but generation of 21st century, I think, should keep in your mind, eventually this world should be demilitarized world. Any problem through dialogue, through talk. So since the European Union developed the last few decades, no longer any violence. Now after Second World War, a number of years, people say Third World War. Now that kind of thinking, now I think disappear. And meantime, I always say, telling people, look, European Union, the spirit of European Union.
His Holiness the Dalai Lama is a great admirer of the European Union, a union of nations that were once arch enemies who later became friends and opted for cooperation instead of war. The union has ensured peace and stability in the region for over 70 years. It reaffirmed His Holiness's commitment to dialogue and peace.
In Strasbourg as a city of reconciliation and also in the European Parliament, of course, a collection of people who represent 320 million Europeans who have learned what it is to form reconciliation between us after so many years of strife.
His Holiness the Dalai Lama first visited the European Parliament on 15 June 1988, where he presented the 5-point peace plan at Strasbourg that elaborated on the middle way approach policy, which His Holiness originally conceived in an effort to engage Chinese government in dialogue and find a solution to the issue of Tibet. His Holiness pointed out that the European integration serves as a great example of reconciliation. His Holiness was awarded the Nobel Peace Prize on 10th December 1989. We are living today in a very interdependent world. One nation's problem can no longer be solved by itself. Without a sense of universal responsibility, our very survival is in danger. I have therefore always believed in the need for a better understanding, closer cooperation, the greater respect among the various nations of the world. The European Parliament is an inspiring example. Out of the chaos of war, those who once were enemies have in a single generation learned to coexist and to cooperate. His Holiness the Dalai Lama has visited the European Parliament on 7 different occasions in the year 1988, in 1990, 1996, 2001, 2006, 2008, and in the year 2016. During an unofficial meeting in Brussels on 25th April 1990, His Holiness the Dalai Lama called for the withdrawal of Chinese troops from Tibet and urged for an increased Tibetan representation in the regional government. On 24th October 2001, the European Parliament officially welcomed His Holiness the Dalai Lama for a formal sitting in Strasbourg. The European Parliament received His Holiness on the 4th December 2008 in Brussels, where he delivered his speech to a formal sitting of the European Parliament as a part of the European Year of Intercultural Dialogue. President Hans-Gert Pöttering emphasized in his welcome address, the European Parliament seeks to be the voice raised in defense of human rights and human dignity. In this respect, Parliament has consistently sought to highlight the human rights of the Tibetan people.
A century or time we need, as I mentioned earlier, the promotion of human compassion, human love, warm-heartedness. In that respect, I think because biological factor, females have more feeling of sensitivity about others' pain. Now the Tibetan issue, basically, you see, to some Chinese officials, that our approach, they consider something spiritist movement. It's actually not. It's totally wrong. Everybody knows we are seeking genuine autonomy within the People's Republic of China. Our supporters, when you showing your support, your concern about Tibet issue, some Chinese feel this is something against China. This is totally wrong. Actually, we are trying to make a contribution regarding promotion of harmonious society, stability, unity. Obviously, if you use common sense, common experience, how can develop unity, harmony under fear, under gun? Illogical. Genuine harmony, unity only come through trust, through mutual respect. Number one commitment is promotion of one sense of oneness of 7 billion human beings. All major world traditions carry same message of love, compassion, forgiveness, tolerance, contentment, self-discipline. All major religious traditions.
Between the year 1989 and 2014, there has been Tibet Intergroup in the European Parliament. Although it's an unofficial group, they provide an excellent platform for like-minded members of European parliaments committed to defending the human rights of the Tibetan people and supporting the resolution to the Tibetan issue through the middle way approach, the official position of the Central Tibetan Administration. In the year 2015, it was replaced by the Tibet Interest Group. Moreover, the European Parliament has also expressed its support for Tibet on many different occasions by using various tools and instruments at its disposal, such as written or oral questions and statements, the annual report on human rights, hearings on China and/or Tibet by the Subcommittee on Human Rights or by the Foreign Affairs Committee. For instance, in June 2012, the European Parliament adopted a resolution on the human rights situation in Tibet, and in October 2011, it has adopted a resolution on self-immolations by monks and nuns in Tibet.
We should always remember the idea of human rights. It's being forgotten, but we should always remind that wherever it comes to, because it's important that all the people have their rights granted. It's especially important with regard to the right to the information.
Since 15 years, I am privileged to be the leader of European parliamentarians who support your middle way approach, Holiness the Dalai Lama. Every year we celebrate your birthday in Brussels, last week in the very famous Orbit Hall. I'm happy to say that our work as a cross-party group reaches visible results. In February 2014, we celebrated our 100th TIG meeting with 300 participants from all over the world. We fight against torture, suppression, and illegal imprisonment. In December 2015, the European Parliament passed a report on the EU-China relations. We successfully integrated a large number of amendments about the human rights situation, about environmental pollution, and the law on counter-terrorism. We published statements about the Tibetan uprising on the 10th of March 2016, and we were present during the demonstration on the Schuman Square in Brussels.
And European Union and European Parliament have passed many resolutions on the issue of Tibet. Has been in the forefront as far as Parliament passing resolution. I think European Parliament has passed the most resolution on Tibet, perhaps ahead of United States also. So for that, we are very grateful, and we want to urge you to continue to pass more resolutions and extend your support for many years to come. And His Holiness Dalai Lama is the biggest advocate and admirer of European Union. After Brexit, he came out and said European Union should keep going because it's such a beautiful example. After two major wars, even the countries which fought against each other, so many people died. Germany, France, Italy, and all others can come together a form of union. This is, akin to a Buddhist philosophy of consensus building as well, coming together, forgiving and coming together. So hence, His Holiness is a biggest admirer and also advocate of European Union when European Union is also challenged from within and from without. So hence, we want European Union to succeed and European Parliament to function effectively and be the strongest voice for Tibetan people.
The European Union has been consistently raising the issue of deterioration of human rights in Tibet with China on all available platforms, including Human Rights Council, bilateral annual human rights dialogues, and during the summits with China. There are increasing voices in the European Union calling China to respect the succession of His Holiness the Dalai Lama and the Panchen Lama in accordance with the Tibetan Buddhist norms.
We raise a number of important human rights issues, including the situation in Xinjiang and Tibet, and also raise an important number of individual cases.
Of the European Council, President Juncker of the European Commission, and Premier Li of the People's Republic of China. First, I invite President Tusk of the European Council to take the floor.
We support China's ambitious reform process and have no doubt that it will be a success. We also discussed how we could further improve cooperation on human rights at the bilateral and international level. I expressed our concerns on freedom of expression and association in China, including the situation of the persons belonging to minorities such as Tibetans and Uyghurs. In that context, I have encouraged China to resume a meaningful dialogue with the Dalai Lama's representatives.
But let me reiterate that for the European Union, human rights and fundamental freedoms are non-negotiable. We always raise our concerns, so was it today too, and insist on having our view on these topics.
For His Holiness the Dalai Lama, the European Union is the future model for the world. He envisions a world with all its 7 billion human beings living as a big human family.
So I often you see expressing the same spirit of European Union, I think eventually should start in Latin America and also in Africa, not whole Africa. Firstly, Northern Africa, then Central Africa, and then Southern Africa, like that. And the Middle East also. I think some kind of common union.
Zerim Chukchi Pande Sikyong Chogi Kasha Kisungti Nangyu.
I now request Honorable Sikyong Dr. Lupsang Singye to kindly deliver the statement of Kasha.
Bimilana mebuti jindo konsekyam gen chmuchola kuja wogdu tang betone ani mangzo kaosum ki zezo namba dine sishu leje namba dine tega gyangsing thone singye mima namba changma nge thoma tering ni pimi mangzu tuje lo tukchu khowegi Nimudalangi Changmal Kashak Sapche Chamdi Testil Yu Shui she said the Mangzu Tuje in the Kala Benden Chozune Di Kolata Ships Tagwa Sunang Sung and the Ne Kashaki Kasure Sunjenti Jalo Nang Mogoche Ngakdone Ningdu Shushana Samsung Jalona wa yimba in a page Tozoki Sungshe Nangshin Cha what the Chepchi Ya Dingsa what the Tage Yungsamaris is in a pegaton Jin Shushana Samsung. She said the Gonzashone Pögi Nedan Sibetoni, Chisu Zenjo Jobetone, the Mangzulamlu, Tony Dugu du Shedi, Kunu Chundu Gabnet, and Zi Konzuchok Zanam Kagashi, Digit Hangma, Ani Siyuna, Chazan Kingre Chishui. And then she said that Konzuchon Chepsi Guan Sheche. The Lunil to go mare and Yami Kundangi Mungmi and Pel Jots Habre Tsayude Kablani Napchunga Nilola Lecture Leguns Tsunabre and Pernal Yu Beta Uba Kyowa Dige Tundala Pembetone 가르치고도 시체 렉처 리고 존아브레 이내야 베즈 가전나와 임베 이내야 다 군대다 야나 레사 유도 갑라 아니 람롱수 마당브레 디네 직동구 정압중압 실로라 아 콘즈쇼 야나 페베 갑라 다 다우죽지 슈르와 디데어 갑란 게유메 투미 소그젠기 총들라이 자브레 자데어 갑라니 그딘 숭도발라 자데어 갑라니 게유메 투미 소그젠기 총들라다 니마가 셰지ringal라 슈베 갑라 아니 소자바랑 망부시부지니 쿠디그레스 안 타저 가르체베 이네야 아니 타 차강쇼스라데오 할라 지메제지 참에 차강용그레스 녀업도 여래야니 고 돌랭 남산이 요마레스 제수 나중에 둘롤 야갈 페데오 갑라 야갈라 퇴졸 페비인스 퇴졸 페데오 갈라 벳코라 더 페게 더마순에 페레 차우 쓰고 걸어봐 송게 시우지 교이체 돌랭낭 데샤스 안 두시운데오 갈라 실렌라에 디데오 실렌 네루데스 네루라인베네 태가 주구주제 균주 제용도 아 공소초에는 항다 상체 망주세나 딘디주여서와 삼세 아니 오늘아 야구시라도와 삼삼주 초와실레송 간세 개요미마 소jen기 총도 소다다 야트서 총도 소다니 dur사화라면도 안 초war레송 안 제수다 별 패고 중부대 아 치수 아니 납중아 굴롤 진조 조마타 다건주 지동구 tukchu 진는 예배 최수민사회 안 도시대라 나겐 침보 제전 최가 숨 아니 변난이 gen생에 망부치 도시된 좀난체 아니 나겐 침모 샤나브레 디난다 비밀 용서 전조 job 속에다 도지 직디 지기 공수쇼 우티 월라 도지 직디 지기 시체 나겐 침모 샤브레 디두갑라 공수쇼네 당은주 이내야 직 땡디의 튠베 슝지 심부도 안데 디데오 할다 저소 속유메 마토베 통합니다 저소 안신시 구두스 제지에 까나고 시송 태도 아니 디데오 갑라다 저거 숨기 구잡 담야 나므레 이내야 단단한 안신 제지 왜 팬체 담샤바 용구요 말에 디데오 갈 도데다 도메기 구잡 디게다 도함 주주군도 쓰기 요데 디나라니 도데 도미니가 유유되어 가나 프랑스 그도 낭체 구잡당 토다주 아니 의장 주시디다 람솔라 땡고마 아사 응즈기 디두갑 그 저소 투밍가 된지 짜뇨 그런 전지 쉬뇨 안 람소 덴종 더부 임바이나 람소 갑라 디데오 할 피메 줄다 까메나 토단 요사 말에 딱 응즈 가르체 세윤되어 갑라니 응즈 구잡 된지 땅나 시체 그도 낭체 토마 담슬랄다 진도구의 체니라 권넘바 총도 탱탕부 소토부 중스 디데오 갈다 저소투미 구잡레 쓰고 와르데 아니 권넘바소 시제 사다바니 사파상 봐도 레군 패고고 프랑스 레군 찰레낭 사뱀ben 니말란 프랑스로 감지 유스 감딘남체다 조시시 맥롯 간시에 아니 두코 싱동 워딘데 좀체 아니 감디체 디나니 익정오 제전 프랑스 거둔낭체 페디고레스 아드네 공소시원당 아주 저조 투미디스 중부레스 다 망조 양타바 중괄라당 아주 기타 쩌딤제 템베치고도 시제 쩌딤 신지랑 쇼르 숨샤바데 공소초랑기 차라네 아니 디남 샤베기 아니 익제지여레 디나레 임베 이내야 공소초 이내야 다 망조 양타바 도구위도 할 공소초 공안 임베 이내야 다 치도 땅 초약 고왕 고그르다스 저dim나 거남 디도 미망부시 항상시 다 디페레스 디도 뇨라이테 중그르 다 간데레스 당아주 공저 치도 땅에 되는 삼로의 고구면도 스테츠dim을 고용의 수레스 제지다 인질의 귤게 쯔베 아니 신지 수용의 솔라의 균주 용샵 되는 중그르는 공저쇼 타직도 띵예버도 고그레스 제체 아니 만주 제수다 저dim 템베나라 임베이네야 공저쇼 치도 나야 쯔베 아니 망조 도단 돌루 차장 고샤바기 대단 샤브레 and the net to rip lola. And was there Guzab number Yore and the Pimegi Guzab Gure Shechen, Pime Guzab Namre. did Penachashabi in Bena, Europe, Switzerland survey, Mangzo Jakab, than the young Tab set over Shiwi is the gore, the Duke of La, Pimikus of Yomare. In a Duke of Rani Constitution, Pomodanium, Pimikus of Guaratas, Chechequanab. Then a children go to Dunju Lol. I don't want to Chujukagi, Chidigosu Sabre, and Dunju Lola, and Pembuk Guzabine, Tozol Gugre, Cheche, that Constitution Gombashadan Kwana. And Chepsi Kuma Sheche, Loni Jesu, lecture Legune Cheche, Zenjol Jomata, and Tezo, Zuya, and Pime Guzab, the Zebe, Gombashadan Kwana, Mangzo Yangtaba, Guyabachi, Kembetone, and Dusnang Shabachres, and Tande, then Sozone, Tezo, Sunshenal, Ships of House Suns, the name any Gupchu, Gochi Lol, the name on Zui, Jedim Dembebna, and the name Galun in Bainea, and Tezoni. Demiana, any you don't cheek lola, check in your chair, and you don't juji lola, any give you chaza, peche, and chepsi goma, chaza, the Mimang Damshabe, Gotil, Nangshe, a lamlution dodere. At the nether, Zamling Chiong le Yubeki, Guzab dita, Trazonal Yudigore. On the per Jacobs, Nangupeg, Zadun Sugu, Sugor, Danny, can Saint George La Minunchi Chiliomare, and per 인세에 배 충토야 그 딕수 가려열에 슬라바이나 되서 열다스 되서 나는 최고 숨가 구잡이열에스 최고가 차장 구잡이열에스 지송자니 배기다 딕수 넘버 토네 아니 딕수 충토야디 되서 레다스 제제 아니 단데 아니 고 저딤 단데 치수 저딤 땜베 지야기다 고왕 차장 되서 나야디 anti kasogre mangzo lamlu yang thaba lamthone doya ki ani neda di ani khongza chok gwangbatar an thandaba do shajoshin do deore adene disongza ni nidongjukji chepsi ko name kabla ine ya anta chepsi ko chaza nang sabi jesu tare nimud ringni ning duna be debe de yins an thengane khongza chok ta mangzo ko chaza nang che Memang Demshabe Gotil, Goman Nangcheta, Dishisung, and Chepsi, the Zingjong Gay, Chazan Kine, Dongage Gugdu, Sivan Shinche, and Tananganzu de Lo, Tagu, the Juments to water. The songs are, and the concert show Gongbadi, love change in Batan, and Mito Gambani, Terzog to me, Toma, Gule Gungini, Chebe, Sishu villages, Hangmegi, Gule Gönche. Dumde Mishabek, Zachenberg, Dumde Mishabeki, Ringdan Chenki, and Zeti Imbichi, Namia, Jayomares, Cheche, Shuachikdi. Then Nibidita, then the Soso ne Tangi Big Sun Nasu, and Yajara, Chiniki Senji Sabgi Zagulolani, Gana Sundu So, Pudent Tibetan, Dilani, Gana Gita, Kundentanki, Tungji. Xinjinping ne Galubnawa de la ani Chojik ni Chaje Galubnaya Nangshin re de Cho ni ne Debina ani ko Zat Hagbog Nedan Chik Save Starisha. Tengai Shudig, Tande Shudig. Gana Kungden Tang Miyu di ani Pödi Gadele Guriata, Puri Gerili Guria, Miyu res. These songs are ani Kranzo Miyu Nyembadi. Yeshabdi Laktar di Imbaine, Tagnon, the Zenon Tony, Chigyordas. Pimisola Yeje, Duxup Tony, Chigyordas, and Tale, and Gana, Shungi, and Jelani, Koran Chiselunje Inea, and Pearl Peche, and Sunshe Naya di, Taco, Pearl di Chisi Tony in Bainea, Kachimbo, Kandi image Sebshra Chayudova. During the Okalit, Sunshe Nali in Bainea, Bena, Kadering Lul Donle Chawres. Ani Ganagi danger the Sunjob D and Peg danger Sunjob the Devius. And these songs and Kadering Lutigelani, Donle Chawres, Cheche, the She Undo Kabla, Dender and Pernala, Tagnenda, Nushu, the Shukchir Duyaba, Pemi, Nanzusharachi with Pemisogi, Rawandi in Bainea, that Yomares in it to word, mesh of a digan, Senu, the not sure walla. Doya imbati sevshra chadesha and sansam the Tibetan and Galubnangsha 산삼 the David Horne sinzin the Chisilunji Nigagi Sungundeo Kabla Neja and Yaga the David Horne Sanzam Nedan Cha Yundeo Kabla and Pue the Nanga Chimbo Kandi me Yagachi Yong Nala and Neja Sanju Gilam Kane Koto Pejin Cheshu Chik Chade Kalang Hansam's Dode Ineya Gana Shungi Imbe Ine Musu Korans Guti Sogi Ineya Galob Nara Burd Dunche and She Yundeo Kabla Uma and Constitution 2000 Pedi Shidigi Dene Imbe Kabla and Yagada Yanag Sanzam Chik the Deva Yomares. A Didio Kali Yagada Yana Par La Imbe Inea, the Sag Sanzam de Meza, 2 Meza, Mungmi, Dungatuyag, Nedan for a child. Uma Lujul Yomare, Meza Asia Yongla, Shide, Pelde Yores. The Pertin Sung Cheben Sungche, the Zugi and Yasanzam like Yami Mang Militaries, and Yasan Gulam Katan, Miman Sama Lagu, the Nuduchi Kansuredas, Kansoka do in a Yagada, Yana Sanzam Laguas, Yana Sanzam Lasavishuli, Yami Mang Miligruas, Manzuka do in a Yagada, Peg Sanzam Ladigus. Yagada Peg Sanzam rest, Tanga red, Tanda redas, and Arunachal Pradesh Chief Minister. And Bema Handulagi in Bainea, and Yagada, Peg Sanzam Sudo, Tako Gamen did the Zatag Marabes, in Shenge Yungdoang in Martas. Cannot of Nova, Kuran Dembres, Kuran Tangane, and a pair down gas and some bimbadi, and a Muma Lujuton, Yusha, but Tanding wins in Rodegores, Church Shudigu. The Sonsa and the Purdy in Bainea, and Ketchimbu Yimbedi, Lo Asia Young Nala, Savage Chayudu. This songs are ending on Zujana, Shung, Gutisola in a Shuedi. Number so Tagno Siju, Duksup, Diag, Siju, the Nobredas. Perdun de Sea Yimbeina, Umelam Shishab Tone, Mingden Sungbe Rangon Naya let Tapshe Yagaji Yomaris. Concert show Peg Nedun Sea Asia la Shide, Lingja Yunya la Tablam Yakshudi, concert show redas. Concert de la Casogure, Gange Swingage Mardas, this one's a Yana Shungi Siju to Norgudus, Chechen telling a Dingidinetic Shushana Sams. The Nedangazo, Manzo the Timbetone, the Vidulhangane, and the Sijon da Tuzoki, Viduton, Seranang Shabre, and Taringanzo, Manzo Tuje Yinzang, and the Tangane, and the Casogure. Vedurimba Mambuch Rodere, and Tale, Miman Sogi, Tona Nange Dula, Tona Nanguare, and Soshe, Chasheland, the Shinducation Stare, a Chashe Neverdu, Kamamang Leronas, Cheche, Bugishuedi, Kamamagi, Michigi Imbe in a very page, Chashe Lembeina, a concert show Gombatar, Mido Gimba Gule Kunche, Manzu Dixur Hatata, Yuba Dilla, indicate the Masone legitimacy Sigrava. The Anzupegaton Sheba Ringdang the Chetong the Nangtugres. Nanzu Zenju Dixu the Manzo Yangtaba in das, Kansana permit Tangata das Kazuki Chashe Landos. Church Mirere Chashe Lembe Inea, the Gus Ringdang Chiru, Dugres, number so long a Tingchik, Manzo the Debeton, Genchi Yare. Again the Inji Minji, Shagwa Shindu Ketchumbres. Then it's Jangdung Naronas Chishueti, and on Sanju Gilam Khan, quiet Chevaina, that Yana Shungtone, and in Anzuki, Vedula Imbe Inea, Kasure, Teju Cheche, Drogdan Peche, Chizo Torshi Taya Cheche, Nangtu Gaya Cheche, Bezundi, Chigi of the Sevstaresha, that in a Shugo Gamare, Di Dengare, Ari Shungtone Inea, Ari Chisi Lunge ne Chebe, and Sinzing Lamdoba Cheche, Arig Vedula. Teju Chigidus, Yana Chigidus, Lache, Shungderan Sung Sabre. Teme Shungne Bet Quara Gera Shorche. Yana Gi Nanzu Teme Vedula, Teju Chigidus, Sanju Gilam Khani Chigudu, Sargoba Juni Chigudu, Nezu Daminazo Penny Chigudu Cheche, Shungderan Tone, Teme Shungrang Sung Sabre. During the Koranzo, Jakab Yune Sogi, Gay Shogi Yobaina, and Anzu Zenjo Mimang, Nungshe Chile Menge, Soki Subsipsi, Machebi Yimbeina, and in Nadi Beijing Dung 첩시기 라고 탑이야디 먼저 대라 박사 야베기 내가 쳐그르다 디 차바 임베이나 다간년두레 쿠란스 레네 사모 두두 디 송자 망조 칼라 키체 공사철 세메슈나 사와니 딕마르다스 다나시 우멜람 칼라 키체 공사철 제가스나 사와니 딕마르다스 외도 칼라 키체 건주 먼주 시에는 딕마르다스 외도 칼라 키체 셔가기 탱게 추주기 탱게 지조 뚝야기 랭귀베나 싸와니니 딕마르다스 디송사 난중원도 디카르스나 링아주데 저존에 팀 땡케브레 디나라 타코 셔가기 촉바 촉이 태주 지초그 메시에데 고와데 가르서거나 촉바 쑥한게 태주 지초그 메시에데 간서는 아주 쳄시 촉바 매베 망조 럼루진스 문도들라 미망랑기 태가 담체 의미솔 수수 더시숭 가르송도 센쳐야 가르점도 로쳐야 내내 공부 시에체 문도디 미망다 의미버 태가 되버 여베 토네 왜 펜체 로야레 딜라 안가즈 부들랭군네 가징 고제 페소 딩아즈 가샤네 레제 상말 담샤요 가르스고르스나 레제소 믹스의 포상의 소르다. 레제스도 베미틱스 레제 사고. 딘냠도 포사사베 슈글라 캐난라 왕제 요레스. 디손스 디 표제 땅 추고 말레스. 단다 가정 거 시제 가속으로 행한카 상마 땀사베 인데 다한테 네엠 깽기 아니 레제날 고마고든데 중고 여베이나 달레는 숭시에 외미수 된사베 제수 디기 니즈 디치조 타겐이 땀 추고 말다스. As a number so legeres. We do nala, we pembinimo, sulla penda, mapping sawan tony can chashi len chugre mado, we mapping gongla. I can't tell you, Sawanini chechug martas, the gain yonamato, Sawani chechug martas. Diangi Nibuton shunasams. Diche at the name Miman Yoni in Baynea, a Jangdung Chegwai, Shinducation Bustare. 외미 상말라니 람롱 용마당 아니 지조 링자 요베기 꿀리 넘어서 공부 시계에 딘데라 나로 지지지 쉐직디이 다딩이 다리슈네 렘브르우즈민데 슈샤나 삼 타마델라 웰루 사베 슈글라타 톱게지 용그레 쇼르게지 용그 다 톱게드 톱두그레 다 쇼르게다 쇼르게 잡조치게서 케 랭고르 마도 케 말레나 지조는 뇨를 하데 그러다스 다등이 쉐심에 가이메 어리외도 진짜 죽지 나라 트디 가르치고 얼스나 샤난 가르치고 얼스나 톰게더 쇼르게 버 켈링 마레스 팀간을 감주 뚜치에 딱 외도데 데베토 뇨라 침부 시부 차그레스 셈디시다요 단데 차 개버 망부지 셈디치고 한스는 엄마 신신 부시다 엘고 파르라 외도 제베 갑라 플로리다 츠베 외드 타 마추상 다원 망볼라 아리라 뇨그르 침부 시부차리 디송자 지든 소바다 망조 소바기 갑조 칭이 속기 가서 막하다 마수네 쇠야디 디두 갑라 중바르다 산 지소 아리 두무칭체 가서는 왜패 뇨그르차 다 뇨그르디 든다 망부 도 용도 칼라 아니 파츠 텐체 저 마카드 쇠체 아리라 탄다 이네야 아니 아리 쓰기도 한다 마카디 깽기 아니 아리나를 강에 탄다보다 하대요 쓰고 디송사 만주지조라 이네야 마카 쇠게 소다지 레베 이네야 공부셔로나스 야갑이 용에 솔라 임베 이네야 마카 쇠베게 야하나라 니수 가절 하대고도 난주 젠주 미망 빠라항실레 맹에 속이 톱게데 톱 쇼르게 켈렌체 도샤네 약쇼레 마도 쇼르게 케 말린 데베 임베 이나 뇨크테 실했다 뇨크테 쇠게 창마 아이 케 말레나 뇨르 차데 그렇다 디송자 디 네버도 공부 시러나 다딩이 의미솔 쉬네 켈링고에 간시데 미망솔 망랑이르다 디 인지미 켈러나 왜 의미소 페베네 티버코로나 중앙케나 토바이나 가수유스 쇼바이네 켈링그레 베스라체 티버코션에 되그라 단다라니 디여봐 디지조 타자다 년토날 켈림바 쇠샤바 임바이나 코란 셰바디 중마 락다 제고고와 디 네버 툴 샤로나 시지 당얘기 쉐디 데네 달래다 내염 데베톤에 니즈 야가 용을 자타고 두고도 아니 간주 셈섭의 가리어서는 배배 지존할 지제다 퇴대 간에 주입에 안 퇴대 레궁레 안 능시 규체 산의 군진 주입에 다 배밀dig수 상매기 꿀의 견체 단대차라 내염 데베톤에 타디디 차시디 야갑 유업 낭신 야가 유업을 하면은 야가 유업은 낭신 차시여 락다리 인베이네 원에라 야가 유업에기 내단 durba imbe ine ya ngonera yak thaju shin de ine ya laktar chebe kala saja sane chigni la hyoang shoya da nang la sane sato ni yorba nang ni chachu mebe ne dan thone ni zu din de yung de gu da jaga di da tanda neyam never nangye mangsho cha de gu da ari brazil jela ya mangsho cha yung tu keba mangbu chigi 진다 쭉지 바르도 낭에디 망루두그마도 뉴루두그마르다스 세용도 이내야다 예자 고접시요레 야슈네 다 고침부 쳇사버타 판도순도 초고아레 다람슬라 야마 페다 딜리니 쯔베 판잡니 쯔베 땅아데 셴그 모터 연질레샤 미다 아잔자 모터 연질레 고추사샤 데이 사유데 칼라 만주 지조 나 단대보도 과야디 시자파겔 찍나우도 니 나우도 스타링부더버지여레 다 다람살라리네 ngazu 중수와다 노블링가 쇠베다 ngazu 단대찰라다 수가르 캉바디나 주투구 여르데 남짐마도 다람살라레 마우르두그레 ngaran sambal라 시주버 레제나라에 낭에 용그레 과야 제바이나 참잠 당소다 리다 추담라 마세 타그링 딜리데와 참잠 롱에데 용구도 세고도 초칭다 레던데 용구 유그레데 이네다 응삼 삽삽 나고도 마도 강진기숑라 네버 레니 충고이나 먼저 비미딕즈 고자고 쳐그르다 로다나레 고자고 고레 고자베이나 아니 먼저 내가 수치 그러다 로비엔 수이 땅그래 데포 수이 땅그래 시자다도 수치 그래 냠다다도 수치 그래 먼저 디 레궁레다스 인지 민지 고 마자바 최고고여래 마야바 제발라 낭에 된주 요마데 되야기 냥가디 체로 모두 충으로 두고면도 나라 삼발라 다 갈려 넘버 쇠베 다 메체 낭에 낭네 다 미퉁의 망슈 너그러바 폐제 둥지 데네 지바 데네 이게 칼로와 다 미수 망아 투기 유네르와 디겔라다 나자과에게 냥가디 차용을 디제지다 간주 슈에디르다 독선 세체 정둥낭체 슈로나스 다 강제기숑 랭감지 마들리그 다 순나다 만나레 마도치베 다 나그르다 디도가라 가르치게 했어요 저러봐 삽삽 나로나 시제가다 가지 진짜 숨바 시방아보도 사부부 차제 퇴치 미만 땅에 차제 슈과 차제 람도에도 슈과 차제 슈인 조조스 다 이내야 다 단다 잘하고 차기도 디존 참에기 딜 토나나로나스 안다 미만 용라 이내야 자고 나로나스 제제 슈에디 단다 임베 이내야 튕게 자고 했는데 당기 슈버나 시레 오늘 야갑 용의 낭신식 다디 제투에 이내 가리 자고 여배네 건주 돈에 배전 쉬고 이때 미망네 차시에 야고 렌체 긴쿠르 야고 시로나 시체 슈에직디 안데네 다들 안지노 콘서 점고 전부 구즈릉 분내봤다 안 변화류 비미소 원도 더쇼 시체 슈에 벽jal로 투잖아 당에 인지겐 도지 슈처와치 today we are celebrating the 60th anniversary of Tibetan Democracy Day. His Holiness has many legacies, and one of the greatest legacy is his democratic ideals. At a very young age, he was enthroned as the leader of the Tibetan people in 1950. He was in his teens. But 2 years later, he established a reform committee to bring or introduce more egalitarian society, to end discrimination within the Tibetan society so that the poor, the sick, the old, the downtrodden can be helped and can be benefited. Unfortunately, the Chinese Communist Party and their military was already in Tibet. No matter how much efforts His Holiness and his team at the Reform Committee put in, it was not successful because the Communist Party of China didn't want His Holiness to introduce major reforms, and they prevented him from implementing any kind of reform. And then His Holiness had to travel to Beijing, to China for, in fact, he spent 11 months in 1954. And he also attended the National People's Congress. And, you know, as he says in his biography and often tells publicly, he was very bored because often at the National People's Congress, many of the people were dozing off, right, left, and center. And whenever there were votes, it was unanimous, all raised their hands, and it was very boring. But in 1956, when he came to India, he had an opportunity to attend the proceedings in the Indian Parliament, and he was, you know, he was surprised, but he was rather pleasantly surprised because he saw a very noisy, raucous Indian Parliament. And he was surprised and rather shocked. He said, he told me also. He says he saw a member of parliament criticizing the Indian Prime Minister Pandit Nehru. That he was, you know, pleasant, and he really liked it. And he took that as an idea that in the future, Tibetan government should have a similar system. Unfortunately, he had to go back to Tibet. And then in 1959, he came to India. And in February 3rd in Bodh Gaya, we offered the great oath of unity, pledging our allegiance to the leadership of His Holiness Dalai Lama and Tibetan people to remain united. At that time, he said, why can't we have a parliament? And soon thereafter, you know, members of parliament were rather selected than elected. And on September 2, 1960, the first parliament was held. And I've met many of them, and they told me that they actually, from Monday to Friday, they all go to various offices as a staff. And weekends, Saturdays and Sundays, they go, we take the tin box and you know, sit under a tree and open the box, and they have the discussion. That's how it started. In 1964, the woman representative was introduced, and, you know, way ahead of many of the European countries, including Switzerland. And in 1977, minority Pen religion also had the representative in the parliament. And so every step of the way, you know, in 1990, 1991, His Holiness introduced election of the cabinet. And then we had the charter in exile. And in 2001, he declared himself semi-retired, and in 2011, fully retired. So for the last 60 years, it was His Holiness' vision. It was his idea, way ahead of many other countries and definitely ahead of Tibetan society. Throughout this, you know, 6 decades, there was resistance after resistance, you know, against His Holiness, saying you can't introduce all these reforms and major changes because we want you to be the sole authority of the Tibetan people. But as early as 1963 Constitution, His Holiness mandated that there be a provision of his own impeachment in the Constitution. For the last 60 years, the achievement we have made is due to the vision of His Holiness Dalai Lama and hard work of the elder generation, and especially the Tibetan Parliament. I want to acknowledge the fact that we always say, you know, the exile administration represents Tibet and Tibetan people. If so, if asked, how? Tibetan Parliament is the institution where you have representatives of all 3 regions and, you know, for Buddhist sects and Pön religion in the parliament. Institutionally, parliament represents and reflects 3 provinces, 4 Buddhist sects and Pön religion. So that's how parliament reflects and represents Tibet and Tibetan people. So as part of the democracy, obviously executive body has major role to play, and so far we have extended all our cooperation in making democracy a success. So on this day, I want to acknowledge the great leadership of His Holiness Dalai Lama for tirelessly working towards a very successful democratic system that we have in exile. And I would also like to strongly refute the statement or the speech made by Chinese President Xi Jinping and the visit of Foreign Minister Wang Yi to Lhasa, to Tibet. In both the speeches, I think they elaborated or introduced major policies and guidelines. But all these guidelines are clear indication that ultimately the Chinese government want to convert Tibet into a Chinese province and make Tibetan into Chinese people. So that's their ultimate goal. So they want to, as they say, challenge separatism in Tibet. But actually we all know that as per the vision of His Holiness Dalai Lama and unanimously passed by the Tibetan Parliament exile, our policy is middle way approach, which is to seek genuine autonomy for the Tibetan people. And repeating it, and by calling us separatists, is wrong on their part. And most dangerously, to say that Buddhism should be subservient to the Communist Party ideals and the motherland of China is absolutely unacceptable to us, and especially to Tibetan monks and nuns. Their loyalty, their pledge, their life to serve for Buddhism in the sense they regard their monastery as their home and next life as more important than this life. And to make Buddhist ideals, Buddhist belief, lower than national laws, national cause, lower than the motherland and Communist Party, is in clear violation of religious freedom. So it's absolutely unacceptable. And in the speeches also, they mentioned the border. They said stability and security of China is dependent on stability and security of Tibet. That's why the foreign minister visited Tibet. It clearly indicates how important Tibet is from foreign policy point of view. This means more repression of Tibetan people, more discrimination of Tibetan people, more violation of Tibetans' basic human rights. And all these are absolutely unacceptable. These are misguided policies, these are flawed, and that's why the Chinese government is wrong on this part. I hope they will realize that His Holiness Dalai Lama is the solution to the Tibet issue. He's not the problem. The problem lies solely with the repressive policies of the Chinese government, misguided policies of the Chinese government. With that, I want to end by saying, long live His Holiness the Dalai Lama, and may aspirations of Tibetans inside and outside Tibet be fulfilled. Pyogyalo Tuchena.
Zirim Tama, Adi Kuzab Tunju Leguni, Chino Koskamion Champuchola, Kadin Jeden Dade, Sudun Shube, Nientung di Pande Sigyon Chone, Unje Dada, Sigbishu.
I request Honorable Sikyong Dr. Lupsang Singye to kindly release a documentary film by the Office of Tibet, Washington, D.C. as a part of CTA's year-long gratitude to His Holiness the Dalai Lama.
I myself not consider as a Tibetan or Buddhist, but rather just another human being.
At age 60, I lost my freedom. At age 24, I lost my own country. Then last 50 years, constant, heartbreaking news. But then, comparatively, my mental state, quite okay, quite calm. So I think the peace of mind really makes differences about our health and day-to-day life, more happier.
His Holiness once called himself the unluckiest Dalai Lama, having spent more time as a refugee outside his country than inside Tibet. But his greatest achievement, in my view, has been to transform his exile into a gift for humanity. He has said that he is half Buddhist monk, half scientist, meaning that he has tried to understand the human mind in order to awaken our capacity for social, emotional, and ethical learning.
I have 4 commitments. Number 1 commitment, I'm a human being. I always believe entire 7 billion human beings, we are same human brothers, sisters. And according to some scientists, we are social animal. So individual's life depend on the community. So now today, entire 7 billion human beings are one human community.
For more than 30 years, you've been a guiding light. You've inspired us, encouraged us to look inward, to look outward, to be curious, to ask big questions, to open our hearts, to bring compassion and science together.
My memory of that first meeting with His Holiness and my dad in 2000 at the Destructive Emotions meeting for Mind and Life was a total transformation of the person I had known for my life up to that point. My dad went from someone who was a hard-nosed scientist and everyone was pretty much wrong until proven right, to someone who was so open to new ideas and to how emotion and the knowledge we have about emotion could actually transform our well-being in deep ways. Not just alleviate suffering, but create something more profound, like emotional awareness. The project we collaborated on with the Stamen design company, the Atlas of Emotion, supported by His Holiness, was a totally new way to think of emotion. He said a single thing that transformed how both my father and I thought about emotion, which was we needed a map to get to the new world. And now we need a map in order to understand our emotions.
Well, the very notion of using a map, a visualization, to approach and enlarge our understanding of emotions, that was a radical step for me. And my whole experience with the Dalai Lama it changed my life in many ways, but most importantly, it changed how I saw what I, as a scientist, could do in the world, what I could reach for. I could see the constraints that my own intellectual Western science upbringing had imposed upon me, and a path to get out of those constraints and see and begin to comprehend the incomprehensible.
Your Holiness, we first met in 1992, and at that meeting you challenged me and you asked why the tools of modern neuroscience couldn't be used to study kindness and to study compassion in the same way that we were using those tools to study fear and anxiety and stress. I made a commitment to you on that day in 1992 that we were going to pivot our scientific work toward more virtuous qualities of the mind and the heart, and do everything we can to help put compassion and kindness on the scientific map.
When I first met you, I was telling you about how we can support children by teaching them how to manage and explore and understand their negative emotions like sadness and anger. And you said to me, that's a good idea and needed, but you switched the conversation and you said to me, why aren't you focusing on positive emotions? You said to me, the mind is like a muscle, and it will seek what it's used to, what it's experienced at. The more time we spend with children on positive emotions, the more likely they are to seek them. And this short conversation changed the nature of my work for the next 20 years.
Because of his inspiration and role model, I got very involved, started Colorado Friends of Tibet, and also started the Peace Jam Foundation, which is an organization that I founded with my husband, and we have reached millions of people around the world. And when we met with the Dalai Lama, he was the first Nobel Peace Prize winner we met with. We asked him, would he do this? And he said, yes, I love the idea, Nobel Peace Prize winners mentoring youth to change the world, but don't just do it with me, do it with other Nobel laureates.
From the very beginning, your vision for a holistic education that draws from the best of both the Western and Tibetan tradition has guided our work here at Emory University. This vision, the first of your 4 main commitments, seeks the convergence of science and spirituality in order to promote basic human values. With your guidance and in collaboration with the Library of Tibetan Works and Archives, we have been able to implement successfully a 6-year-long science curriculum in Tibetan monasteries and nunneries through Emory Tibet Science Initiative.
My work has been with people diagnosed with cancer and their family members. And since about 1998, people in my program have developed a training program in mindfulness meditation based on the mindfulness-based stress reduction program for people living with cancer. And so we've been developing that intervention, testing it, and conducting research, publishing articles about that intervention for the last 20 years, and really have seen remarkable transformation in people living with cancer through learning the powerful skills of meditation, mindfulness, self-compassion, these sorts of virtues and ethics promoted by His Holiness, the Dalai Lama. And personally, I've been involved with the Mind and Life Institute for just about as long. And my fondest recollection was in 2008, when I was invited to present my work at the Mind and Life Institute at the Mayo Clinic in the States, and His Holiness was in the audience. And so I presented my work, and afterwards he came on stage and presented each of us speakers with the white scarf and thanked us for our presentation. And at the time I was heavily pregnant with my daughter, who just recently turned 12, in fact. And I was enormous, and he came, and when he put the scarf around my neck, he also touched my belly, patted my large pregnant belly and gave me a smile and a wink, kind of a nod, which I interpreted as a blessing for my daughter.
His Holiness has always emphasized the value of science. He's even gone to the extent of saying if science cannot validate some of the insights that we have from the great wisdom traditions, he will favor science. Because of His Holiness's championing science and consciousness, the world is a better place.
No matter how many books we have read or written, no matter who we are or what we believe, what matters most is how we receive one another, with kindness, with pleasure, and with full recognition that we are in the presence of another being of great worth.
The concept of warm-heartedness, concept of a compassionate attitude, is not simply a religious matter. It's a universal value. The way to keep all this knowledge, not just through prayer or ritual, but we study seriously. First level of knowledge is hearing, reading. The second level of knowledge, serious thinking, including debate. That brings conviction. Then, you see, familiarize, that we call meditation. Then you gain gradually deeper experiences.
You visited our center in 1979. There was a retreat that was ongoing here, and so as part of your visit, we had you come and address the retreatants. And after that talk, there were some questions. I remember one young man raised his hand and he said, I feel very discouraged. I've been meditating, but I don't think I'm making any progress. I don't think I actually have a capacity to develop wisdom or compassion. And I thought, Your Holiness, you looked even a little bit surprised, and then you responded to him by saying, that's just wrong. That's wrong. Every human being has the capacity for growth, for change, for developing wisdom and compassion. We all have that ability. And there have been so many times, Your Holiness, when I have thought about that comment. First of all, it helped that young man a lot. And I think of it, every single day when I speak to somebody who is discouraged, which is probably every day. People will display that feeling. I have no capacity, I have no ability, I have no heart. And I think, that's just wrong. I say that to myself when I feel discouraged. And I especially say that these days as I look at the world and sometimes actually feel despair. That things can never change, that we can't seem to get it right, to grow. And I say to myself, that's just wrong. So I want to thank you, Your Holiness, for all these many years of service and teaching and tremendous inspiration for so many. You are truly one of the great lights of this world.
And the religious harmony, that's my second commitment. All major religious traditions, different philosophy, but all carry same message of love. Sometimes I sort of express all those religion is religion of human being. So therefore, all religion emphasizes the best thing about human mind, that's love.
It's a little while since this photograph was taken, about 15 years ago. And we've both aged a little bit since then. Both a little wiser, I'd like to think. But your visit that day to Belfast was tremendous. It was a real inspiration for us. It offered an endorsement of our work in Peace Players, and it was a privilege for anybody who was there that day. We continue to use the power of this to bring young people together, to help bridge divides. And some of the children who were there that day are now young leaders in their communities that are helping to address issues of divided society, racism, prejudice, and so on. So our work continues both in Northern Ireland and globally. We're reaching further and deeper into communities, and like you, we continue to work for peace.
When I was 22 years old, my friend Kevin Koval and I traveled to Dharamsala, India for a short audience with His Holiness. It was established by his friend Brother Wayne Teasdale, who was the mentor of Kevin and myself. And Kevin and I told His Holiness about this new organization we were trying to start called Interfaith Youth Corps that would bring young people from different religious backgrounds together to do service projects and engage in positive social action for the healing and improvement of the world. His Holiness held our hands, his eyes twinkled, he patted us on the cheeks, and he encouraged us to use our various Muslim and Jewish inspirations to found this organization and to build it out in the United States and beyond. And I want to say to His Holiness, thank you so much for that early encouragement, because 22 years later, I still lead that organization.
I remember dearly 20 years ago going to Dharamsala, and I spent 7 days up there in MacLeod Ganj in the company of your good self and with many ministers and the young people there. Well, a spiritual moment, and one that I shall always remember. And I also remember leaving MacLeod Ganj, going by this tiny plain, and the Nengjung, the medium to the oracle, his sister asked me would I give him a lift on the plane, and I said, of course. Well, the turbulence was terrible. The turbulence was frightful. We bounced across the firmament, knee to knee. It was so close, white-knuckling it. And he dug into his bag, and he took out this mala, which I have traveled with for these past 20 years. He blew on it, and he put it round my neck. And so I travel with these beads in memory of my time there and your teachings. And I also travel, of course, being a good Irishman, with my wooden rosary beads. And they go hand in hand with me. And that's what's so wonderful about you, because you have such compassion for all faiths, all religions. And we need that deeply in our society these days. I remember a reporter asked you, he said, what is your religion? And you said, kindness. Well, kind sir, your holiness, I wish you the greatest joy and love from all my family.
You've been such a magnificent force for goodness in this world, and sometimes in ways that perhaps in the moment you have not even been aware of. So I'd just like to share one little anecdote which illustrates this. We were together at a Buddhist Christian conference at Gethsemane Abbey in Kentucky, the home monastery of Thomas Merton. And there were 25 Trappist and Benedictine monastics there, and 25 people from the Buddhist tradition. We had been speaking together, as a group in the chapter house over quite a few days, just in dialogue and conversation. And then one day after one of those meetings, you left and were walking down the hallway, and I was a little way behind you. And at the end of the hallway, there was a statue of the Virgin Mary. You stopped for a moment, paid respects, perhaps offered a prayer or two, and then continued walking. Well, in seeing you do this, it struck me so forcibly because it's not something that I would ever have thought of doing. I grew up kind of with a Jewish background, but then now for the last 50 years been very committed to the Buddhist tradition and practice. And so for me, the statue of the Virgin Mary represented something other. And so it wouldn't have occurred to me kind of to stop and pay respects. But when I saw you do that, it was so heart-opening for me, because I realized that for you, there is no other, you know, and you were paying respect to those values which we all hold in common. So it was very transforming for me in that moment, you know, and heart-opening in a very significant way. And then interestingly enough, at the very end of the conference, when the abbot of Gethsemane Abbey was summing up the week, he also commented that he had seen you stop and pay respects to the Virgin Mary. And he said that in seeing you do that, that was more meaningful for him in terms of the interreligious dialogue than any of the words that had been spoken during the whole week. And so sometimes just your expression of that great, open, kind heart, which doesn't make an other of anyone. It embraces all of us, you know, in our common humanity.
We have so much to feel grateful for him, because His Holiness has really made the ancient teachings and philosophy and practices of Buddhism relevant and vibrant even in this 21st century by bridging science and insights of Buddhist tradition and showing to the world, and particularly to the younger generation of the traditional Buddhist societies, that our inherited tradition of philosophy, psychology, spirituality, and contemplative practice are not just historical, inheritances, cultural inheritances, but they are actually very relevant and powerful, even in this very modern, globalized 21st century digital world.
Aside from the wisdom that one derives from listening to his words and being in his presence, there are some very special qualities that make him so unique amongst religious leaders of our times and beyond these times. One of these qualities is precisely his playfulness, for which he is so well known. I remember in particular in Seattle, being on a platform together with him and Desmond Tutu. The event was called Seeds of Compassion, where they were teasing one another and playing with one another as if they were children. And this is not just an endearing quality in terms of his personality, it's something far more profound. There is a tendency with all of us as we tend to get older, and especially those in positions of authority and respected by others, to become a little bit staid, even a little bit caught up in our own self-importance. And if you are considered to be divine and revered as such, the danger is surely all the greater. It is precisely this childlike quality of His Holiness that ensures that he is not a victim of such kind of ossification. It guarantees his eternal youthful curiosity and makes him relevant to everyone, regardless of age, time, or place. As a result, it is not only a joy to be in his presence, it is also a learning process, if one is open to it, of how each of us should try to be able to retain that youthful spirit, that openness, that curiosity, to engage the world without prejudice, without rigidity, without any staidness.
We love the fact that you use your sense of humor to connect to the people that you in your world. We've never been more inspired by another human being, and we thank you for the reminder that in this imperfect world, we can still find an awful lot of happiness.
Healthy mind, healthy body, very close connection. Usually fear and anger often go together. More fear, more distrust, then more fear, more frustration, then
then anger comes. So constant fear, anger, hatred actually eating our immune system. Other hand, keep warmth here, warm-heartedness.
The Dalai Lama has been an inspirational role model, a role model of justice and reconciliation, of peace and compassion for the international community, where he is a Nobel Peace Laureate, for the Canadian community, where he is an honorary Canadian citizen. He received the Tibetan Prize, and an inspiration to young people all over the world who are looking for a role model at a time when countries and peoples are troubled and fractured.
It is quite remarkable in a world where military force, money, and greed dominate our lives, that there is someone who's teaching compassion and forgiveness and understanding. It's a bit like finding water in a desert. In a world that often feels like it's getting darker, to have a few people who are coming in and switching their torch, their flashlight on, allowing us to see clearly what's going on and giving us something to aim for. Thank you so much for what you teach us. Also, I feel very lucky to have been living in a world that has you in it.
You have impacted my life in so many ways, from the time we met nearly 22 years ago through today, with your humanity, your compassion, your wisdom, and your foresight in how to be empathetic, how to create an empathetic world, and how to honor human rights. I know you so understand the importance of this document, and how my grandmother, Eleanor Roosevelt, had so much to do with it. When we met, I gave you a copy of it, and you remarked that you know the whole thing by heart.
Please pay more attention about our inner value. And that value is concerned not difference of color, not difference of social background, whether rich or poor, no differences, and also not depend on faith. Even without faith, we human good quality by birth already there. In fact, compassion, the seed of compassion, is a biological factor. We are a social animal. And on top of that, the very way we grown up need others' care.
My main concern is ecology of Tibet. I feel, you see, Tibetan ecology not only concern for 6 million Tibetan people, but you see, because all the major river, which cover Pakistan, India, and Burma, Thailand, and then Vietnam, these countries, Mekong River used to come from Tibet. Then China, Yellow River come from Tibet. So you see, Tibet, people usually call roof of the world.
I'm in total awe of your life of service. For all these years, you have dedicated yourself to advocating for the rights of people, animals, and the environment. And I only hope and pray that we shall emerge from this pandemic, and people, especially corporate leaders and political leaders, have a new and better understanding of how everything is interconnected and how our disrespect of animals and the environment has been a contributor to this coronavirus pandemic and also to climate change.
We have practiced aggressive nonviolence in the spirit of Hayagriva.
We have saved tens of thousands of whales and dolphins and seals and sharks and countless numbers of fishes through our approach, which we call aggressive nonviolence, an approach that was inspired by His Holiness.
For many years, he's represented the Tibetan people in their fight for freedom, and he's done it to the worldwide respect of the world. But let me tell you one story. Decades ago, I was in Lhasa, Tibet. At that time, you were not allowed to have photographs of His Holiness. I was walking through a market, and here's a picture I took. This man held up his child, and he held up a picture of His Holiness. He motioned to my camera. Even though he knew that he might risk arrest, he wanted me to take the picture. Afterward, I asked him, why would you risk prison to have the picture of His Holiness? And he said, because they have to know. One of the great moments of my life was being able to, along with Marcel, to give a copy of that picture to His Holiness. It hangs every day over my desk in my office in the United States Capitol. Because every day I look at that and I think of what the Dalai Lama stood for peace throughout the world, for human understanding, for bringing all people together, no matter their nationality or their religion. And he touches everybody's conscience, no matter who you are, as he works to promote universal values of dignity and compassion and forgiveness and tolerance.
I just wanted to wish His Holiness the Dalai Lama a happy 85th birthday. This birthday celebration is going to be celebrated by people all over the world virtually this year because of the pandemic. But this is important, not just personally in terms of wishing him happy birthday, but to reiterate our strong support on behalf of the people of Tibet.
Greetings. I'm honored to speak here today in wishing His Holiness the Dalai Lama a happy 85th birthday. During this time of celebration, I think this is the perfect opportunity to reflect on the accomplishments of the Tibetan people in their fight for freedom and religious liberty. As Americans, we share a common cause with the Tibetan people in our value of human rights, religious freedoms, and cultural preservations. As many of you know, those of us in Congress share an overwhelming support for Tibet and the contributions the 14th Dalai Lama has made towards peace, nonviolence, and religious understanding. Further, it is in the interest of myself and my colleagues to recognize the genuine autonomy of Tibet and cherish the deep bond between the Tibetan and American people. Consequently, last year, I introduced a resolution recognizing these ideals and accomplishments of Tibet. The resolution also calls on the Speaker of the House, Ms. Pelosi, to extend an invitation to His Holiness, the Dalai Lama, to address a joint session of Congress to discuss peaceful solutions to international conflicts. Sir, I'd like to say personally that it would be an honor to host you either over video or in person in the United States. I will end by wishing His Holiness a happy birthday and hope that this time can serve as an opportunity to further strengthen the U.S.-Tibet relationships for years to come. Thank you.
As we celebrate your birthday, Dalai Lama, we wish you great happiness, and we want to give you thanks. Thanks for the tenacity that you've shared with the rest of the world to continue to fight for what's right, for religious freedom, for the people of Tibet to be able to practice their faith freely and without oppression. When I last saw you in November, I was very heartened to hear you say that you thought you would outlive the Chinese Communist Party on their control of Tibet. That they've been controlling the region for a long time. You haven't been allowed in, but that you're going to outlast them, and I believe that you will. Happy birthday, and thank you for your tenacity in fighting for the people of Tibet. God bless you.
I was very intimidated when I was coming to Dharamsala to meet you because I didn't know how it would go or how nervous I would be. But I remember you immediately put me at ease with your laughter. You made me feel comfortable. You laughed at my Tibetan, Niemin la Arifien, or Jola Arif, and Kusudebu Mbin. So I spoke to you in some Tibetan, and you were very impressed and laughed with your assistants. And you're also very caring and very compassionate and almost fatherly. I remember you took my hand as we spoke, and it was a very lovely gesture. I also remember that, I asked you some difficult questions because I was struggling with a few issues, and you gave me some very candid and very direct and very wise advice. I talked to you about the notion of potentially coming to the Tibetan Autonomous Region and not being sure about what kind of things I would see there because things might be orchestrated in a way that didn't give me a true sense of your people or your land. And you thought about it, and you said to me quite directly, you said, I think you should still try and go. And you said, it is important for me to see with my own eyes your people, your land, and to see their condition. But you said it is also important for your people to see me, because that way they would understand and see with their own eyes that I have not forgotten the Tibetan struggle, that Canada has not forgotten the Tibetan struggle, and that the world has not forgotten the Tibetan struggle. So what I will say to you on this, your birthday, Your Holiness, is that I committed myself to doing just that when I was with you in March of 2018. And 2 years later, I renew my commitment to you that I will always try to be a strong voice as a parliamentarian for you and for the Tibetan cause and the Tibetan people, for the middle way approach, for the issue of Tibetan linguistic freedom and Tibetan religious freedom. It is very, very important, and thank you for inspiring me to keep up this important work, which has been your life's work.
Tashidale, happy birthday, Your Holiness. I'm so delighted to participate in this global celebration of the 85th birthday of Kundun, His Holiness the Dalai Lama Tenzin Gyatso. I was honored on the first occasion to meet His Holiness when he came to Canada, and I helped to present him with honorary Canadian citizenship in 2006, recognizing his friendship with Canada for many decades and his championing a core Canadian value, our belief in pluralism. On that occasion when I first met His Holiness, his thoughts were for people who were living under great pressure, in particular the Tibetan refugees in the colonies of Arunachal Pradesh in northeast India. And he asked me to, as Canadian Immigration Minister, help create a special resettlement program for many of them to come to Canada. Thanks to his wisdom and insight, we were able to eventually implement that program. As a result, hundreds of Tibetans from AP have now made new lives here in Canada, keeping fidelity to His Holiness's teachings by maintaining and transmitting to the next generation the magnificent and ancient Tibetan culture and Buddhism. So, Your Holiness, on behalf of all of your many friends here in Canada, we wish you a joyful celebration and thank you for your service not only to the Tibetan people, but to all of humankind.
半个多世纪以来，达赖喇嘛尊者一直处于流亡状态。但是，除了我们大家都看得见的，他在推动世人关注藏人的人权以及环境的破坏，和推动全球关注中共在沦陷区不断迫害人权之外，这些人所共治的贡献之外，我个人觉得达赖喇嘛尊者在更高层面上，在人们内心提升上，同样起着更为重要的作用。经常听达赖喇嘛尊者演讲的人我们都知道达赖喇嘛经常谈这个慈悲心啊、和平心啊、爱心啊这些东西。事实上，这个佛家一直以来是倡导这种世界的和平，少一些杀伐纷争。凡事要从内心去提升、去修行。
And I know that you said long back that your favorite birthday present
was to know that people are doing things in the direction of your different life purposes. You know, human values and world religion understanding and Tibet and saving Tibet, and especially Tibetan culture. Words will not express how meaningful and how grateful we are for your kindness and your wisdom. And Oma Guru Vajadara Manju Shri Vakinda Sumati Sasana Dara Samudra Sri Bada Sarasiti Hum. We definitely think so.
Thank you so much for your years of wisdom, your friendship, and your love. I know that my life has been a much better one for having His Holiness the Dalai Lama in it.
I'd like to wish you birthday blessings, congratulations on your 85th, and to let you know how deeply grateful we are for your dedication to bringing more compassion, more love to our world. Blessings, blessings, blessings.
To help bring your message to the world, I traveled to almost all the communist countries, the Middle East, and Latin America. And ever since then, I've been continuing to bring your message to the world with my website project, Study Buddhism. It's through the website and social media that our team is working to further all of Your Holiness's commitments, now in 31 languages, and it's reaching millions of people all over the world. So once more, I wish you a very happy birthday with my prayers for your long and healthy life. And I pray that in all my lifetimes, I may be able to serve you as a messenger of the Buddha. Tashi Delay.
I send you greetings, good wishes, and love from myself and the Nuclear Age Peace Foundation. Thank you for being you.
I know my life has been immeasurably enriched by the friendship I have shared with this great spiritual leader. On this special day, I send him my love and best wishes, and I want him to know how pleased we all are that he, of all people, happened to be the Dalai Lama.
Your Holiness, you have said love and compassion are necessities, not luxuries. Without them, humanity cannot survive. At this time of great trial, this is the most important message: how we can create a sustainable, humane, and ethical world through compassion. Happy birthday. Happy birthday. We wish you peace and continued good health.
We just want to wish you on this very special occasion a wondrous and blessed experience of Buddha nature, a fuller experience of compassion, and we pray that your prayer for more compassion in the world may manifest itself in a way that touches all lives, those the least amongst us to all, and that this world would find its way to a more just, a wiser, and more compassionate place. We thank you for your inspiration and your leadership in all of these things.
Your Holiness, it's Michael Fitzpatrick wishing you a happy, 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 happy birthday.
This is a birthday poem for His Holiness the Dalai Lama. A small entreaty. May I be nothing but the peeling of a lotus, papering the distance for you underfoot. One lone skin to lift and fashion as cap to cradle your bowing head, an ear to hear the great horn, a slipper to mount the temple steps, one lone skin bearing this wish. May your hands be full of nothing. May your toys scatter the sky, tiny yellow bundles, bursting like stars, like smiles, and the laughter of a bell. Happy birthday.
It's with great pride that I wish him all good things and many more years. And both for my husband and I, we continue to be both his admirers and his good friends.
As Speaker of the United States House of Representatives,
It is a pleasure to join millions of Tibetans and all peace-loving people to wish His Holiness the Dalai Lama a wonderful 85th birthday. The Dalai Lama is a messenger of hope whose spiritual guidance has been central to his lifelong mission to advance harmony among the world's religious traditions and has been a vital force for securing human rights and human dignity for Tibetans and people around the world. On this special day, I recall our bipartisan delegations to Dharamsala to meet His Holiness when we saw the aspirations of the Tibetan people firsthand, particularly in the faces of the beautiful school children we were honored to meet. The sacred bonds of friendship between the United States, the Dalai Lama, and the Tibetan people is ironclad and critical to ensuring Tibetans can practice their faith, speak their language, and celebrate their culture, free from fear of violence or persecution. On behalf of the United States Congress, may we continue to work together to advance the noble cause of peace. May His Holiness's birthday bring happiness, joy, and a year filled with peace and security for all Tibetans and for the world. Happy birthday, Your Holiness.
Your Holiness, Laura and I send our very best wishes on your 85th birthday. I admire you, I care for you, and I love you.
Your Holiness, Hillary and I are delighted and honored to join your many friends and loved ones in wishing you a very happy 85th birthday.
We, like so many, are deeply grateful for you, your inspiration, your wisdom, your example, and yes, your friendship. You've spent your life helping others, promoting understanding and kindness, and encouraging people around the world to do the same.
You've always understood that approaching people with an outstretched hand is far better than with a clenched fist. And we need that understanding now more than ever.
We hope you find meaningful ways to celebrate your special day and many, many more into the future. Happy birthday.
Your Holiness, I just want to wish you a very happy 85th birthday. Over your many decades as a spiritual leader, you have embodied the value of compassion, and you have inspired millions around the world to speak up for the freedom and dignity of all human beings. It has been a great pleasure of my life to meet with you over the years. Most recently, several years ago in India, where we talked about the importance of promoting peace in the world. And today, as a global pandemic causes the most suffering for the poorest and most vulnerable among us, and as too many leaders are using this moment to stoke hate and division, your message of compassion and unity is more important than ever. Your example reminds us that to live a meaningful life, we must serve others, care for others, love others. It's a message that I return to as a source of strength and purpose. On behalf of myself, Michelle, and our daughters, we wish you a joyous birthday and health and happiness for many years to come.
God bless. I suppose it would be remiss of me if I didn't sing a song. It is your birthday. So forgive me if I'm off key. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Your Holiness. Happy birthday to you.
Hello. Tanda Adi Kuzab Tunju Legune, Tanda Sudin Shibi, Nientung Dia, Gino Consacam Gyunchon Buchone, any Sixin Be Nientung da Barikaji, any Sibishugi.
His Holiness the Dalai Lama have just watched this documentary film by the Office of Tibet, Washington, D.C., and now we would like to present you with a short video and some photographs of His Holiness watching this film.
But then, comparatively, my mental state, quite okay, quite calm. So I think the peace of mind really makes differences about our health and day-to-day life, more happier.
His Holiness once called himself the unluckiest Dalai Lama, having spent more time as a refugee outside his country than inside Tibet. But his greatest achievement, in my view, has been to transform his exile into a gift for humanity.
Heartbreaking news. But then, comparatively, my mental state, quite okay, quite calm. So I think the peace of mind really makes differences about our health and day-to-day life, more happier.
His Holiness once called himself the unluckiest Dalai Lama, having spent more time as a refugee.
Tujina, Tsawe Taringi Kundri Zo de Ani Shri Rakesh Patiania Cho Pebgu Gi Sheshena Yore, Yinaya Tanda Gagar Gi Sinzin Surba Cho Kuzi Pemba Zobi Gengi, Ani Tanda Gaga Genyo, Ani Ninjan Duringala Ya, Kushab Kongi Chedu Ya, Nyanyi Kudu Shushin Yotab, Ani Tanda Kushab Rakesh Patiania Cho, Ani Kundri Zo Peja Tuyo Mare Shuenyi, and Taringi Zegodi Giging Ani Trewayi, Linge Tujina.
Our chief guest, Honorable Minister of Himachal Pradesh, Prakash Patania, had actually agreed to grace this occasion, but because of the 7 days mourning in India in honor of the former President, Pranab Mukherjee, he is not able to attend public event during the 7 day of mourning in India, and that is the reason as to why he is not able to join us for today's occasion. We have now come to the end of this program. Thank you everyone for being with us.